I'm willing to bet that, yeah. You know what, here, let's do it with this hand because it's closer to the middle anyway. It's all over the place. Okay, I'm willing to bet that I know what some of you are going to say. That I must be on some kind of anti-coward crusade right now. And you bet your hiney ass that I am. For those who don't know what I'm referring to, I did do a podcast episode that is a first part of a multi-part mini-series of my other podcast, SavoCast, that is about why I hate cowards. Now, this video is not part of that, but it is within the theme of that. So I would recommend that y'all go check that out if you're going to take the rest of this video in good faith. It's not required viewing, but if you are going to engage with the topic in which I am referring to here, I would recommend watching the rest of that video first before watching this one. It is also on Spotify if you're interested as well. So the subject of today's video is a gentleman by the name of Mike Pollock. He is the voice actor for Dr. Robotnik, also known as Dr. Eggman.
Have no fear, Eggman's here!
How did you pass security?
I pretended I was a bar of soap and gave them all the slip.
Fun fact, in case you didn't know, you can catch Mike Pollock as well as Dan Green, who voices Knuckles the Echidna, in the English dub of Squirrel and Hedgehog, the North Korean anime. I did do a video about that on my now archived channel if you're interested in watching that. That's not really what this video is about. This video is more about Mike Pollock and his views on Israel. We do need to talk about them. I feel that the people who are talking about it aren't necessarily doing the best job discussing it, not necessarily having bad takes, not really pushing Mike Pollock where it needs to be done, except for a few exceptions, which we will also go over in this video too. I just had an epiphany that the more I work on this video, the more I realize that people are going to be asking me, what the heck does this have to do with Sonic the Hedgehog? Well, hey look, I've done other videos about Sonic the Hedgehog that you all should go watch instead. What's the deal with Knuckles the Echidna? Go and find out for yourselves, because yeah, as you probably have figured, this video is not about Sonic the Hedgehog. It's just about one of the voice actors and his political views. Anyway, back to the video. So on May 3rd of this year, which as of recording this was 2 days ago, Mike Pollock did a tweet, a moving tribute to the Israeli hostages by my pal Heshi Wallfish. Until we can peacefully coexist, music is the universal language. TW Violence Blood, hashtag bring them home, and then there's a download link on archive.org, and I looked it over and I was a little how do I put this, perplexed. If this was just about releasing the hostages, this wouldn't be an issue. There wouldn't be controversy. That's a pretty simple take. But the song is a very heavy song. It's very slow. Admittedly, it's also kind of not a good song, no offense. I'm not trying to insult the artist of the song.
There's a grief we share together. There's a pain that won't depart. Empty chairs at empty tables. Ragged holes that fill my heart.
But whatever, what do I know? I'm just a musician. Anyway, the song is about grieving for the hostages that are captured by Hamas. All of this is fine for the most part, except for when they start talking about the line,
but in the stillness of the morning, hateful souls as black as night.
In politics, a dog whistle is the use of coded suggestive language in political messaging to garner support from a particular group without provoking opposition. The concept is named after ultrasonic dog whistles, which are audible to dogs but not humans. Dog whistles use language that appears to be normal to the majority but communicate specific things to intended audiences. They are generally used to convey messages on issues likely to provoke controversy without attracting negative attention. Yes, I realize that I just cited Wikipedia, but being able to identify dog whistles is a pretty crucial and basic element for political analysis of any kind in the first place. This is where it's like they start to dehumanize the enemy. They start doing the us and them aspect of it. It is completely devoid of the context in which Israel and Palestine exist today. Like, in order to completely buy into this song and the nationalistic narrative that it is trying to sell, you need to completely dehumanize the Palestinian people. You need to equate all Palestinians as Hamas, which I have loads of examples of either Zionists or defenders of Israel calling everyone that they disagree with, including members of the United Nations, Hamas. And due to the words that are in the song, you need to then equate what a Palestinian is to a hateful soul.
Hateful souls as black as night.
Now, of course, this is obviously not to dismiss what Hamas did, and that it's obviously wrong what they did on October 7th. And to be fair, the rest of this verse goes on to talk about the violence that took place on that day. But Israel specifically exists, similarly to the United States, on settler, colonial, and genocidal terms, right? Because in order to believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, you have to erase what the Nakba was from your head. You have to ignore that that even happened. And for those who don't know, the Nakba was an ethnic cleansing campaign similar to what's been going on recently since October 7th. The Nakba was an attempt for Israel and the broader Zionist movement to erase the Palestinian people and their culture and their livelihood, including their houses, including their places of congregation. They wanted specifically to erase the concept of a Palestinian. You may have seen images of Palestinians holding keys. These are the keys of people's homes which were lost to the late 1940s Nakba. Holding possession of these keys, especially since this is all that they have left of their original home, is an act of defiance saying that they never consented to leaving. And this right here, acknowledging that Israel as a nation state founded on settler, colonial, and genocidal terms, existed since 1948, this sets a precedent and a wide contradiction to the narrative that Israel has a right to defend itself. That's like saying that the United States has a right to defend itself against Native Americans. If Native Americans here in the United States started to arm themselves and mobilize to the point to where they have a sufficient threat towards the U.S. government, at least you could say that they're justified in doing so. With over 500 years of genocide, torture, and erasure through assimilation and ethnic cleansing campaigns. That is the principle in which Israel is trying to defend itself on, and it's an uphill logistical battle, and it's not working. Clearly, Hamas is not all Palestinians. If it was really about destroying Hamas, which takes 56% of the parliament in Palestine, is it really necessary to decimate the civilian population? I'm gonna read to you a list of facts that have been provided by the World Health Organization. Over 30,000 people were killed, including 14,000 children, over 80,000 injured, over 10,000 missing, over 2 million displaced. 50% of residences have been decimated. Unsanitary makeshift tents are what people are living in, with hunger and starvation. And keep in mind, this is including with the flower massacre that took place earlier this year. Over 150 United Nations workers have been killed in Palestine from the IDF. Think about that. Are you now going to claim that the United Nations is working for Hamas? The ambassador to the United Nations of Israel did make that claim.
Every number from the so-called Ministry of Health is Hamas. Many UNRWA workers in Gaza are themselves members of Hamas. The time has come to bust the myth of UN-supplied fact.
Everyone that I don't like is Hamas. Yeah, there's a reason why this particular statement was heavily criticized by, well, the entire fucking world. This is an attempt by an authoritarian Western nation state founded on imperialist principles to disseminate any and all criticism that it has received since October 7th. This nation state, being Israel, has nationalistic followers. people whom are unconditionally patriotic to Israel. And these people genuinely believe that Israel as a nation-state founded on genocidal and settler colonial principles can do no harm and can do no evil. As nationalists, they believe that Israel is the exception when it comes to nation-states who have done oppression. So the ambassador of Israel wants you to doubt the United Nations and any claims the United Nations makes against Israel. You may notice that the gentleman here is wearing a Star of David. This is a performative attempt to get people to feel like Israel is being persecuted by the United Nations when it's making these statements. The reason why this is performative is that historically, when Jews were supposed to be wearing these, it was quite the opposite. The Nazis, whenever it would occupy new territory, made Jews wear the Star of David as a symbol for, well, getting sent to concentration camps later on. Jews under Nazi occupation didn't choose to wear the Star of David. They were forced to, because that's what nation states do, is coercively enforce things with a monopoly on violence. So Israel, as its own nation state, with a consolidation of its own power founded on genocidal and settler colonial principles, is pretty much performing this persecution that it is getting, all while trying to delegitimize any criticism that it receives from the United Nations and from the world. Anyway, so now we're going to be referring to a video that was posted by the Sonic Show YouTube channel. Yeah, let's wait a second, y'all. Let's put on the brakes for one measly second. Since I am responding to a video made by this YouTuber, I don't want anyone getting the wrong idea here. The Sonic Show YouTube channel, as well as my YouTube channel, Turbo Queer, both make videos and content related to Sonic the Hedgehog. However, the Sonic Show YouTube channel does not involve itself with politics. Pretty much at all. However, I do. I'm not afraid to wear my politics on my sleeve. So for the record, my opinions are my own. In fact, for the most part, the Sonic Show specifically avoided making comments, and I believe that was intentional. One other disclaimer that the Sonic Show made for his video, which I will echo here, is that most of the video that you're about to see is unedited, with a few exceptions that don't have anything to do with the topic at hand. So, link in the description, bitch. And of course, I'll be giving commentary as well, because it's my video and I will be definitely editing the shit out of this video.
Now hold on! I came here peacefully! Wait, Ben, let's hear what he has to say.
So it starts off with Mike Pollock giving his opinion and his stance on the tweet that he made, kind of giving some context and his position for the most part. I want you to pay attention to some of the qualifying statements that he tries to make in this bit.
All right, so please be patient. I've never done one of these space things before and only sat in on them as an observer. So let's see how this works. I'll start with a bit of an opening statement, if I may. Didn't make any real notes, so we'll see how this works from top of mind. I'll start by saying, quoting the last words of Daniel Pearl, another famous Jewish hostage of recent memory. I'm Mike Pollock. My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I am Jewish. In case that wasn't common knowledge, it should be by now. And there was some discussion earlier today if I was hacked, because I uncharacteristically, apparently, decided to share a video that I was sent by a friend of mine, a Jewish broadcaster, and his business partner. They both are famous for Jewish-themed song parodies. I've been a fan of his. I've promoted, I have been the administrator of his podcast for a while. And we still keep in touch, even though the podcast and his show are over. But when he has a parody, song parody of some kind worth sharing, he'll share it with me and requested that I share it with others. And because this was a particularly hot button issue, today's, which was a parody of the song Empty Chairs and Empty Tables from Les Miserables, the Broadway musical and West End musical, I heard it. I appreciated the sentiment. I appreciated the parody as a parody, having written tons of parodies myself. That used to be my job in a previous life. The accompanying video imagery, a little thought-provoking to say the least, but I was not prepared to separate the audio from the video. It was one complete package, and I shared it as it was, along with my sentiments that I would also like to see the folks currently being held, the Israelis being held as hostages in the current war between Palestine and Hamas, and have those hostages returned safely, which I thought was a fairly noble and honorable request.
Okay, that is enough for now. I'm trying not to clip-shimp him out of context. I know that is bad faith, and I'm just trying to get his full stance and his position on what he is talking about before I comment. But I gotta chime in at some point. I think that is only fair. But let's go over the list. Mike Pollock introduces himself with his father being Jewish, his mother being Jewish, he is Jewish, was sent a video by a Jewish friend. His friend does Jewish song parodies. The topic of the song is a hot button issue. The parody is from a well-established Broadway musical. He heard it and appreciated the song and the sentiment and wanted the Israeli hostages freed when he shared the video. But here's the thing. The beginning statements that he opens with are qualifying statements so that he can speak from authority. In the past, I've done a video about how the British Colonel Richard Kemp, or as I like to call him, Dick Kemp, made a moral argument for the justification of the Israeli occupation and IDF violence against Palestine. And as we discussed later in the video, even though Benjamin Netanyahu shared the PragerU video featuring Dick Kemp on his Twitter page, neither Benjamin Netanyahu nor Colonel Dick Kemp can make a legal claim for that justification because it's been ruled as illegal by international law in the year of 2014, 10 years ago. But the reason why this is relevant to this video that I'm responding to is because this claim that Colonel Richard Kemp was making was an appeal from authority, that he himself has been involved in several other invasions on behalf of the British Empire, as well as the several nations that the British Empire allies with, which includes Israel. And therefore, by his logic, he can make a justification for the violence that the IDF is doing to Palestine. And I want to make it abundantly clear that there is nothing wrong with establishing that you and your family and your friends are Jewish. In fact, and I'm speaking personally here, since October 7th, I've actually gained more respect for Jews. The broader Jewish community, especially in protesting spaces, have made it abundantly clear that they do not stand with the Zionist regime of Israel. And just in case maybe you haven't seen this among your Jewish friends, but there is nothing within Zionism that explicitly states that you have to be Jewish or a supporter of Judaism in order to be a Zionist. In fact, a lot of Jews see what Israel is doing as a repetition of what the Holocaust was to the rest of the Jewish diaspora. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here, and I am going to be skipping around just a little bit to get to some of the broader points. Like I said, the full video will be in the description on the Sonic Show's YouTube channel, so go ahead and watch that if you want the full context, but I am going to be skipping ahead.
Here's first is, am I going to go by usernames? Let's just start with without a name. Sonic News Guy's here. Oh, good. Someone from the journalistic media and side of things. Sonic News Guy, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Good. I can hear you. I can't see you because, again, you disappeared. No, now you're back. Don't believe everything you see. But how can I help you? Thanks for joining us.
I had a question about your take on the hostages.
Okay.
So, do you think it's partially beneficial, especially when, like, Israel has more Palestinian hostages, to keep some hostages so you don't get, like, laid to waste? Do you think there's some strategic benefit in that?
I'm not a military strategist, so let me try and figure that out.
But you play one. Play one on TV.
You're right. That's all scripted and not by me. I guess from a bargaining perspective, I don't like the idea, but I understand how those in the hawkish side of the world that handle such military affairs, that yes, that would be a bargaining tool. If it were me, I probably wouldn't want humans to be my pawns. No pun intended for any other pawns that may appear in media in which I'm associated. But I guess from their perspective, yes, From my perspective, I wouldn't if I was running a war, which, boy, I hope I never have to do.
I agree with you.
This is as combative as I'd like to get. I'm sorry, what?
I was saying I agree with you. All hostages are bad, but I was just saying in particular, it's easy to say release them, but almost it'd be like giving up the upper hand if they release them. Because then it's like, why don't they just bomb all of Palestine? Like, what leverage is there?
Yeah, but notice in at least when I was saying it, I wasn't saying release the hostages. I said bring them home, which doesn't mean release them. It means at some point they get released and then they come home. So yeah, we're being very semantically oriented here and parsing phrases. But yeah, it's a tough situation all around. But yes, ideally there should be no hostages. But John Lennon called for an end to war in the 60s and 70s. How'd that work out for you?
That's true.
We can talk a good game, but who's listening? Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a bit of a weird question from the Sonic Show, but I'm not really faulting the Sonic Show for that. I mean, especially considering the topic at hand, it's a pretty fair question. And to give Mike Pollock credit where credit is due, he did say that not only was he not a fan of the whole dynamic and scenario in the first place, but that he was just not a fan of the fact that humans were being used as pawns and bargaining chips. But now we need to stop talking about the abstract and the hypothetical and look into reality for a second. The following articles, which I'm about to cite, come from multiple sources and they all predate October 7th, 2023. Here's one article from AP News. Released August 1st of 2023. A mere 2 months before the October 7th attack, Israel is holding over 1,200 detainees, nearly all of them Palestinian, without charge or trial, the highest number in over 3 decades, an Israeli human rights group said Tuesday. The detainees, 99% of whom are Palestinian, are held under Israel's policy of, quote, administrative detention, end quote, without trial and under allegation that Israeli authorities keep secret. The detentions can range from a few months to years, and authorities often extend them for unknown reasons, according to Jessica Montel, the executive director of Hamoked, the rights group that published the figures. Hamoked said this makes it nearly impossible for detainees or their lawyers to mount a proper defense. Quote, the overall figures is outrageous, Montel said. This is a patently illegal practice. These people should be given a fair trial or released. Here's an article by the United Nations explaining how the IDF and Israel make the occupied Palestinian territory into an open-air prison. Released July 10th of 2023. Francesca Albany, special reporter on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, presenting her report on arbitrary deprivation of liberty, said since 1967, Israel has detained approximately 1 million Palestinians in the occupied territory, including tens of thousands of children. Currently, there were 5,000 Palestinians in Israeli prisons, including 160 children, and approximately 1,100 of them were detained without charge or trial. By the way, see this bit right here? It looks like they're trying to fight anti-Semitism for fuck's sake. The special reporter said that the occupied Palestinian territory had been transformed as a whole into a constantly surveilled open-air prison. The occupying power framed the Palestinians as a collective incarcerable security threat, ultimately decivilizing them, namely eroding their status as protected persons. Israel's unlawful carceral practices were tantamount to international crimes which warranted an urgent investigation by the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. All the more as these offenses appear to be part of a plan of de-Palestinization of the territory. This threatened the existence of a people as a national cohesive group. The vice president of the council said Israel was not present in the room to take the floor as a country concerned. Here's another one, and remember, these all predate October 7, 2023. Although this is an infographic, this was released on April 17, 2022. Almost 4.5 thousand were held in Israeli prisons, 530 of whom of that year were held without trial or charge. 160 of them were children, 32 were female, 549 were serving a life sentence, and 499 were serving a sentence for more than 20 years. But what's this on the bottom right here? On April 17th every year, Palestinian Prisoners Day is commemorated to highlight the plight of those held in Israeli jails and their struggle for freedom against Israeli occupation. They have a fucking holiday for political prisoners, Mike. Even the Times of Israel, which is normally biased in favor of the Israeli state, actually did a coverage on the human rights violations and hostage situation in Israeli prisons, even citing the same human rights group from earlier. The practice has also been used with a handful of Jewish Israeli terror suspects in recent years, though far-right leaders have come out against its employment in such cases, including last week when 4 settlers were put into administrative detention over their alleged involvement in a series of rampages in Palestinian villages. They are currently the only Jewish Israeli suspects held under the controversial tool. I wonder what that's all about. The bottom line here is that I find it rather unserious when Mike Pollock and the Sonic Show are saying this.
I was saying I agree with you. All hostages are bad, but I was just saying in particular, it's easy to say release them, but almost it'd be like giving up the upper hand if they release them. Because then it's like, why don't they just bomb all of Palestine? Like, what leverage is there?
Yeah, but notice in at least when I was saying it, I wasn't saying release the hostages. I said bring them home, which doesn't mean release them. It means at some point they get released and then they come home. So yeah, we're being very semantically oriented here and parsing phrases. But yeah, it's a tough situation all around. But yes, ideally there should be no hostages. But John Lennon called for an end to war in the 60s and 70s. How'd that work out for you?
Because as we went over, Israel as a nation state have been holding Palestinian hostages in far greater numbers for far fucking longer than October 7th and the amount of hostages that Hamas has taken. Not that two wrong make a right, of course, but clearly in this dynamic, Israel is the aggressor here. It's been the aggressor for almost 100 fucking years. Speaking of Israeli hostages, let's talk about what happened to 3 of the Israeli hostages in the hands of the IDF. During combat operations in Shajaya, a dense neighborhood in the Gaza City area where fighting has been taking place, the Israeli military said, quote, mistakenly identified 3 Israeli hostages as a threat, end quote. Troops fired at the 3 and they were killed, the Israeli Defense Force said. This is a protest from April 29 of 2024 of Israeli citizens protesting, demanding a ceasefire, which Benjamin Netanyahu refuses to do. You can even see in the crowd that there are people holding signs with family members who are hostages. Yeah, those people are kind of fucking pissed. I fucking wonder why.
We're sick of this government. We're sick of the whole process. We want a hostage deal now. We want the hostages back home. I personally would like to stop the war. I'm angry and sad, and I resent what happens in Gaza. We want peace. We want to live together in peace, and we want the hostages back now, today, tomorrow.
I do find it a little baffling that while Israeli citizens who have hostages that are captured by Hamas are still demanding a ceasefire, while Mike Pollock, comfortable at his own American home, is talking about the hypothetical of using bargain chips to release the hostages. Which, by the way, is the reason why the video is called Mike Pollock is a Coward. Because he can't be damned to say free Palestine, or free Gaza, or ceasefire now, which is the exact demands of the families of hostages are making right now on the street, protesting Benjamin Netanyahu's refusal to concede to the families. In other words, and I don't believe I'm stretching things here, Mike Pollock is taking the stance that the nation state wants him to take, and therefore it throws his qualifying statements about him, his Jewish family, and his Jewish friends right out the window because it doesn't matter in this case. There's more to cover though. We're gonna skip ahead a little bit.
Hello, you're on the air. Hi, how can I help you?
So, I guess really, there's a lot of questions right now.
One would hope.
I guess, a lot of people are questioning, but I guess the main question that I have is, are you going to release a statement about the Palestinian hostages?
No, because I'm apolitical that way.
Hold the fuck on. Did you just seriously say that you were apolitical when, like 10 minutes ago, You said,
So I shared the video. People then decided to infer all sorts of political beliefs that I did not express, and so far haven't shared and don't really have, because I'm a fairly apolitical guy.
Are you going to release a statement about the Palestinian hostages?
No, because I'm apolitical that way.
I am absolutely floored just by the flip-flopping he just did. When it comes to his friend's poorly sung parody song, he's a fairly political guy. But when a fan requests a statement about the Palestinian hostages held by the IDF, no, because I'm apolitical that way. Especially since Israel is the aggressor here, spanning almost 100 years of taking their own hostages of Palestinian people, a lot of whom without any kind of due process, with warnings by the United Nations and the World Health Organization of this exact kind of authoritarian takeover, with even Israeli citizens demanding for a ceasefire from Netanyahu. This is your response to Palestinian hostages? I don't want to jump to a rash conclusion here, but you are demonstrating a double standard between Israeli and Palestinian hostages here. Okay, I did cut you off. Let's continue from where we left off.
I'm a Jew. I'm surrounded by Jews. I have Jewish friends, I have Jewish family, I'm in Jewish Facebook groups, I'm seeing stuff about the Jews, and my Jewish friend sent me this Jewish video. So right now, unfortunately, while the world should be unbiased, I'm biased towards the Jews and the Jewish hostages, because that's what I see. Obviously, it should go without saying, I don't want anyone to be hostages anywhere. I don't want there to be any violence anywhere. I'd love an end to war. I can't make that happen. I'm just some guy talking into the void on Twitter here, or on X, formerly known as Twitter. But I'm not up on foreign affairs and foreign policy. I'm not an expert on that. My recently deceased cousin was. If he was there, he could have that discussion. I am not informed enough to opine on the situation as a whole, but I can opine on there are hostages that weren't home for Passover, should have been, would have loved to see them be back. The rest of the Palestinian hostages, you exist, you should be free too. But at the moment, I'm sharing the video that I got from my Jewish friend because I'm a Jewish guy.
I did want to just give this kid a huge thank you for asking this question because it ended up giving us a very revealing side to Mike Pollock, and there's a lot to unpack with what we just heard. It once again confirmed that he is absolutely willing to use the logical fallacy of appeals from authority, saying that because he is Jewish, that his family is Jewish, that his friends are Jewish, that his social circle are Jewish, to him this somehow makes it okay to think of Palestinians as lesser than, or if not lesser than, then something besides a human being. I promise you, I am not trying to put words in his mouth here, but given what we do know about the history of Palestinian hostages in the hands of the IDF and the Israeli government, we can't really come to another conclusion. He did go on to reveal that he is ignorant on the history of Palestine, as I just elaborated on, and that he shared this video that was made by his friend. Well, Mike Pollock, I understand that you and I have somewhat of a parasocial relationship. I can't really call you my friend. You can call me a fan of yours because I do like your voice work with Dr. Eggman, and I also think that your voice work with Sensorso from Squirrel and Hedgehog was phenomenal. So maybe since this video is quite informative on stuff that you are claiming to be ignorant on, maybe you'll share this video and get some eyes on it. And I do hope that my intentions are clear here. I'm not trying to attack you or cancel you or deplatform you. I definitely don't want any of that.
All right, well, I'm just gonna say you're not speaking into a void. You have a very clear audience. You do have a big audience.
Thank you.
And when you have an audience like that, you just can't. Sorry, I'm exhausted, but you can't just. I mean, there's a lot of Palestinians who like you and support you as well, right?
I get that.
The truth is, you can't just pick one side like that, right?
Okay.
You gotta advocate for hostages. That's what I'm trying to
I'm a Jew. Are the Palestinians gonna like me less if they find out I'm a Jew? Hope not. I don't like them less because they're Palestinians. But as we all live in our own little bubbles, I'm in a Jewish bubble most of the time. So I'm more familiar with the plight of the Jewish hostages. I am surrounded by Jews. And I've been a Jew all my life. So if you put, we go with the red pill, blue pill analogy, I'm going to go with the pill that is most familiar, more than likely. But as the legal expression of an expressio, I can't do it in Latin, but the expression is the exclusion of, no, the expression of one is the exclusion of another. That doesn't apply here. Just because I'm expressing one, that does not mean de facto that I'm excluding the other. I'm speaking about what I know about. I'm not one to opine about stuff that I have no knowledge about. You know, people ask me questions about voiceover work. I opine about that because I know about that.
Well, I'm not trying to sound like disrespectful or anything, but I think you do have to educate yourself and look at both sides before making an informed opinion. That's just my opinion. I do have to get going, but I really do appreciate your work. And
thank you.
Have a great
Thanks
day.
for calling.
What I really hope for is that even with your Jewish heritage, that you still learn from this, especially since other Jews across the entire world are protesting in favor of a free Gaza, of a ceasefire, of a free Palestine. Because, no offense, but you keep using your lineage as an excuse to not directly confront this issue that is much bigger than religion. We will get more into that later, because there's some other callers that do show up and do discuss that particular topic, and they do a pretty good job of it. But again, I don't want to shoot my load early here, folks.
I wanted to touch base on not the previous guy, but the guy before, when he said, I'm an activist, actor, not activist. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuck with me, and I kind of wanted to would you kind of figure that kind of speech out? Because now that's kind of resonating with me, because that I kind of get that, what do you call, I don't say hit close to home, but more like that applies to me at times.
Sure. Where
people ask me, and I'm just always kind of on a neutral, but I'm always kind of a people's person. Who I kind of want to see people happy, but I'm never a big one side over the other. You know?
Sure, it's often an older child versus younger child thing if you go back into child psychology, but generally some people have very strong opinions and desire to share them on every possible subject under the sun. Some, like me, tend to be a little more stay in your lane. Other people want to be all over the road and be Wally Weaver. I'm not judging. I'm also famous for not judging. You can do whatever you want, but when it comes to me, I'm not an activist for the sake of being an activist. You know, people love to say, you can't be neutral. Neutral is complicit. Great, I get that. You know why you say that? Because you're an activist. Great. Go ahead, be an activist. Pick up your picket sign, grab your torch, have a field day. You don't have to drag me along. I can sit and watch. I could silently counter-protest, but what's the point of that? I could just keep my distance. I choose what I activize about. I'm in a couple of trade groups that I should be more activist-y about. There was the SAG after strike happened. I didn't pick it then. Didn't have to. Could have. Didn't. Chose not to. That's okay. I understand that today in the world of the internet, and especially in the world of young folks with big opinions, there's going to be more activism. When I was a kid, there was activism. You know, there was the 60s, even before I was a kid. The 60s happened, but not everyone was expected to be an activist. It wasn't mandatory. So it's okay. You don't have to be. You can be. Won't stop you from being, but not everyone has to be.
This is yet another revealing side to Mike Pollock's cowardice, and I really want to talk about this for a bit. It's almost like he's openly acknowledging that he is so privileged that he could just sit at home and look at protesters exercising their First Amendment right and bitch, moan, and complain about it.
Pick up your picket sign, grab your torch, have a field day. You don't have to drag me along. I can sit and watch. I could silently counter-protest, but what's the point of that? I could just keep my distance.
Like, look, I'm not trying to be mean, but that is your political position that you are expressing right now, is that you are so privileged that you could just sit at home and bitch, moan, and complain about other people who are doing much more courageous activism than you'll ever dream to be.
When I was a kid, there was activism. You know, there was the 60s, even before I was a kid. The 60s happened, but not everyone was expected to be an activist. It wasn't mandatory.
That is such a laughable take, like such a laughable stance. I wasn't gonna mention anything about it, but you keep bringing it up. So yeah, let's talk about the 60s and 70s. People were protesting the Vietnam War, and in case you were living under a rock during that point, The Vietnam War was, pretty fucking deadly. But I think that there's an interesting perspective about this point in history. Did we really win that war? Like, what does victory even look like for that war? It's not like America has established a friendly diplomatic relationship with Vietnam since then, especially since the effects of Agent Orange developed by Monsanto are still felt today, actually. But still, back then, if we wanted to learn about what was going on over there, we had to turn on the TV, which was either controlled by the state or controlled by private media. Now we have the internet. Now you can see first-hand accounts of people uploading videos of the IDF decimating entire villages and towns. And I wasn't gonna bring this up before because it seems like a low blow, but I'm gonna bring this up now. I can't believe I have to fucking do this. I don't know, should I even do this? Should I even subject myself to this? Okay, fine, I'll do it. M-A-M-T-E-R-A-I-M-M-A-M-T-E-R-A, enter.
I'm not up on foreign affairs and foreign policy. I'm not an expert on that. My recently deceased cousin was. If he was there, he could have that discussion. I am not informed enough to opine on the situation as a whole.
Yeah, I am gonna be a fucking activist about it, you spineless fucking coward.
People love to say, you can't be neutral, neutral is complicit. Great, I get that. You know why you say that? Because you're an activist. Great, go ahead, be an activist. Pick up your picket sign, grab your torch, have a field day. You don't have to drag me along.
If you really wanted to stay in your lane, you would have educated yourself more on what goes on in society. That song is a song that is meant to mock people who are Palestinian getting detained and held hostage by the IDF. In case you didn't fucking get a clue. In case you want to play more plausible deniability that you are ignorant on anything. That you want to play dumb. Yeah, in the face of absolute fucking evil, yeah, I am gonna be a fucking protester. Let me ask you something. Throughout the Holocaust, would you want people to fucking just sit idly by and not protest? Of course you're gonna say no, because you are Jewish, and you would say, hell no, I wouldn't like that. Seeing me or my ancestors or my friends and family die, you'd hate that.
People love to say, you can't be neutral, neutral is complicit. Great, I get that. You know why you say that? Because you're an activist. Great, go ahead, be an activist. Pick up your picket sign, grab your torch, have a field day. You don't have to drag me along.
Then why are you being complicit with Palestinians? I don't know, but I thought the lesson of the Holocaust was that type of shit should not ever happen again. The phrase never again.
First off, I just want to say, I am a big fan of yours, Mike.
Thank you very much.
I've been, hearing your voice in Sonic Colors on the Wii, so it's kind of cathartic to talk to you right now. But I just want to get to the point.
Please.
Man, when I see, when I just got on Twitter today, and I see all this, controversy and everything happening with you, it really just came to a shock, and personally, I haven't really looked into the whole Palestine thing that's going on right now. Not really a huge news guy myself, but what I did want to say is that, you have a massive platform, it reaches out to a lot of thousands of fans, and seeing the responses that you're making just, rubbed me the wrong way. I get it, you're expressing your opinion, but from what I've seen, I think the best way to handle controversies like this is to just, not, respond to so many people, because, it kind of made everybody just freak out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if you just made the post and left it alone, I feel like maybe it would have gone a little better, and not have this whole eruption, oh, he was hacking. Well, I mean, people probably still think you were hacked.
Right.
But, like, I think the situation could have just been handled better. You are free to, this is a free app, you are free to express every opinion that you want.
Understood.
But from things I've seen, handling controversy can be done in a much better way than I think that you handled it. But again, can't change the past and stuff like that. But I just wanted to say that, it might have scared a lot of people. I know it kind of scared me, what was going on.
Well, I'm here to solicit feedback, and I'm not going to shut down all the feedback. But as we've discussed, people can disagree and hopefully still be cordial to one another. I am an entertainer. I find comedy where others won't find comedy. Even if I see the comedy and can't make you see the comedy, I get that. Comedy is very subjective. But I especially, when backed into a corner and have to defend myself, not unlike many Jews I know, I resort to self-deprecating humor. I resort to bad puns. I resort to snappy answers. There was a feature in Mad Magazine years ago, snappy answers to stupid questions. And it was just all sarcasm. And I default to snark. I default to sarcasm. Unfortunately, seeing it in print is different than hearing me say it in person, because just like with acting, you lose the line delivery, you lose the emotion behind it. So it can definitely be misinterpreted. That's a risk I'm always taking. That's a risk I've taken again here. But when I made the post, the first handful of responses were not surprisingly Free Palestine. And as the Jew that I am, seeing Free Palestine, we Jews tend to read anti-Semitism in many of those, because it's kind of, if it's not one thing, it's another. So folks that say Free Palestine have a tendency to also have some anti-Semitic feelings. So that got me a little worked up. And then with each individual challenge, I chose, wisely or not, to respond in my typical snarky way. I guess I can apologize, but again, it's going to be one of those, I'm sorry you feel that way type of apologies. I'm sorry that what I said got misunderstood. Wasn't my intention, but I guess perception is reality. So sure, could I turn off the snark? If I had to, yes. Do I want to? No. Should you ever trust people who ask themselves their own questions? No. But that's a matter for another time. See? Just got snarky there. So yes, get that. Can't change the past? Absolutely right. Can try to change the future? What good will it do at this point? Who knows? Hope this Twitter space clears up some stuff. Don't know. So thank you. Appreciate that. I've taken that to heart and in the spirit in which it was intended, and exactly the reason why I was soliciting feedback and taking the feedback I'm getting.
I don't have a whole lot to say about this, but in case you were confused as to what they were originally talking about, he made a response to somebody asking if he got hacked by saying that he was circumcised, and what the fuck? But a lot of your audience is literally children. And you kind of have to be a little bit responsible for, your own actions, even if you are kind of like a witty, snarky Lewis Black wannabe. I mean, Lewis Black is at least competent with his snarkiness. And he's also Jewish. He's one of my top favorite comedians of all time, right up there with George Carlin. But listen to this follow-up question that the kid asks.
Yeah, also just one more quick question.
Sure.
To get to that for me. So, I saw a few people, saying we got to recast Mike Pollock now as Eggman and everything like that. Do you think that this controversy might have some effects with your relationship with Sega at all?
If Sega has any empathy whatsoever, and I believe they do, they'll look at the initial tweet and say, oh, Mike wants to see the hostages return home safely. That's honorable, and leave it at that. Nowhere does Mike express anything Zionist-y I didn't blatantly support Israel's actions. I didn't support Palestine's actions. It wasn't about the crux of the conflict. It's about the people minding their own business, and then suddenly they find their hostages in Palestine, and they're missing their family back home. We just had Seder. For Passover, they weren't there. They would have missed Seder. They did. So that's the gist of the song. As I mentioned, the song had visual images, kind of necessary because they were pictures of real events. I didn't make the video. I didn't choose the images, but the sentiment of the song, which was exclusively bringing them home. I'm surprised they didn't use "Bring Them Home" from Les Mis, but don't let me get all show-tuny. But I would like to think, and if Sega decides to speak to me about this, and they may not have noticed, I don't know, but I will happily have a frank discussion and explain that it's not political in that way. It's a humanitarian issue of folks who have become collateral damage in a conflict. It would be great if they didn't ask to be hostages. Maybe they should be let go. Same for the Palestinian hostages. Don't know them, haven't seen a video. But again, hostages in any conflict didn't ask to be hostages. Back in the 80s, we had the Iran hostage crisis. They didn't ask to be hostages either. So same thing. Hostages should be released. I think that's a reasonable thing to say about hostages everywhere.
Now, personally, I cannot comment as to whether or not Sega will discharge him or give him some kind of penalty, but what I do know is that corporations in the United States, no matter what your political opinion is, if they find out what your internet activity is online, especially if it is political, they will give you some kind of penalty. Of course, I don't want that for Mike Pollock. I hope that Mike Pollock continues his career. All I'm really saying is that if there hasn't already been a meeting between Mike Pollock and Sega, then the meeting will be pretty awkward. Not to mention, they're gonna see that this conversation that you're having with all your callers, and they're gonna see some new development in your discourse. You have been asked a lot of hard questions. A lot of questions in which you should have some kind of knowledge about if you're gonna be commentating on it. And if any representative of Sega is watching, let me give you an example as to what the nature of this whole controversy is. Imagine if I, as an American citizen, made some uninformed statements about Shinzo Abe without researching it. You would find my statement to be rather ignorant, especially misinformed. Probably xenophobic as well. And say, if I was your employee saying these statements about Shinzo Abe, it would be rather disqualifying. That is the nature of what is happening here. Mike Pollock is making a bunch of uninformed statements and refusing to do further research except for the feedback of his little echo chamber on Twitter.
Alright, well, yeah, again, I don't know a crazy amount about the situation. I haven't really formed my whole opinion on the matter, so I can't really give any input of, what's right and what's wrong in this situation.
I mean no disrespect with the following statement, but I don't think all of these 12-year-olds are really equipped to be giving Mike Pollock the pep talk that he needs, and to be fair, neither am I. I'm doing the best I fucking can, because all I can really hope for is that with the benefit of hindsight, maybe Mike Pollock will investigate further into this topic, especially since now he's learning that he is so passionate about it.
I'm also like a content creator in a way, but that's neither here nor there. It's just that cool. Just to get my view that I'm very in the community as well.
That works.
So I think that the main problem that I have, there's two people here, so there's another person who wants to talk to you, who's more well versed in this. But as for my side, my main question would be like, I think it's good that you work for Sega, not necessarily Nintendo, because their ninjas are real. But I think my main thing was not necessarily, I don't think the circumcision joke was necessarily bad taste for a joke normally anywhere else. But I think it's not even just the circumstance at hand, talking about Israel or Palestine or anything like that. I just think that the minors are usually a lot of Sonic fans, minors, children, and to be making that joke not just so they can see it, but it could even be at one of them. And I think that's something that Sega wouldn't necessarily look at lightly if they think anyway of Nintendo. I don't necessarily think it's the original post that would be their problem, like you say, but I think that one kind of lined out that way when there are minors and children heavily involved, especially if that could be pointed towards them. If one of those children or minors or the person who made the original comment, and then the response be to that to talk about genitalia, I don't think is something Sega would necessarily react well to. I just kind of wonder what your response would be to that.
Valid point, but I would counter that there is no obvious way to tell a person's age without digging a little more deeply into people's profiles. And I will also point out that you're not supposed to be on Twitter until you're 13, at which point you should know what words are. But valid point.
Still a minor.
I'll counter it. Yes, still a minor, but even so, kids, for example, sorry minors if you're listening, but if you're circumcised, you probably are already aware of what that is.
Okay, yeah, this is getting really fucking weird. Yeah, what the fuck, Mike Pollock? Why? But more importantly, I think this person is trying their hardest to explain that you need to be responsible as an influential figure, and I think you need to at least own up to your words, which you're kind of just doubling down in defense. You're like on defense, clearly. But okay, I clearly said my piece on that already, and I'm not going to keep repeating myself. What I really want to get to is what this person's wife ended up saying, and I mean, go off, Queen, 100%. Please.
Hi, his wife.
Hi.
So I think what he's trying to articulate here more so is that you have a very young fan base, and that's something that you're aware of. So I think he feels, and a lot of people feel, that it's probably just not an appropriate comment to make knowing that you have a young fan base. But all of that aside, I do see what you mean about stating that the initial comment isn't something that should be controversial, and overall it shouldn't. But considering that people have followed it up with asking about you to make statements on, let's say, the Palestinian hostages, which there are, as you know, or at least many people know, many of, you replied to it by stating as if it's not something you really had to do because you're not a political activist, and that it's okay for you to make statements about the Jewish hostages because that's a humanitarian aspect. See, I don't see the difference between the Palestinian hostages and the Jewish hostages as humanitarian versus political, because political, this would be something more like legislation on taxes. Now, there's a lot of genocide going on and a lot of death occurring on the side of the Palestinians, and has been for a long time, even prior to October 7th, to be quite frank with you. It's just exploded and become much worse in recent times. So I think the issue here is that whenever you try to divert a little bit by stating that it's political, but in reality, that's a humanitarian crisis. These are lives that are being lost. This isn't a matter of opinion of colors. This is a matter of human life. This is humanitarian issues on both sides, not just the Jewish side. So I think that's where people are a little concerned by some of these comments. And I think another issue is just, for instance, when you said people would say free Palestine, you looked at it as anti-Semitism. And that's really, there's nothing anti-Semitic in that. There are Jewish professors standing with these pro-Palestine protesters and students that feel that this is being misconstrued, and they are also standing with their students, and you could see that reported as recently as today. So I just don't really see why it was an issue from the beginning not to just acknowledge that there were also Palestinian hostages, which I see you somewhat doing a little bit in this recent conversation. But I feel like, and then you've made a lot of really distasteful jokes, like hostage jokes, to some of the people who have even spoke to you in this live chat. And just considering people are dying on both sides, and especially on the side of the Palestinians, I just feel that there's a lot of people that have distaste right now for what you've been saying. And I think it's pretty rationalized. And when people are asking you what you think Sega's going to feel about this, or the employers, or whoever it is that's in charge of this. You say, well, they'll look back to my initial comment. Well, aren't you concerned about what they're going to see as the follow-ups about some of the statements you've made afterwards? Not necessarily just the initial comment?
They know me better than you do, with all due respect. They have dealt with me in person. They know that I'm generally snarky. They know that there is no evil intention behind it. They know that it's all in good humor. They know me. I have that going for me. That may not be a defense. That may not be any kind of insurance. But that's a fact. I work with these people. When I work with them, I work with them directly. I see them in person. You don't know me. You know the public persona that you see on Twitter. That is not representative.
And I agree with that, and I think that's great for you, but they also have a business to run, and this is highly controversial. And you do sort of represent them in some way by your statements. Aren't you concerned that they might be a liability?
As my bio states, my opinions are my own. They do not represent those of any of the employers, and I'm a freelancer and I work with a lot of clients. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any of my clients. There's not enough room in a bio to say that, but that's what my opinions are my own means. Lots of people have that same statement. So no.
You can say that, but when it comes down to it, you do somewhat represent them. There's a lot of companies that have some sort of backlash when their employees say things that might be controversial or inappropriate or offensive to an entire community that is facing genocide, to be honest with you. So I'm glad you feel comfortable with that, but I do see this as a problem, and I would personally be careful how you're stating things. I think he took us off. It says he's speaking, but I can't hear him anymore. Well, for some reason, I can't hear you anymore. It seems like it shows that you're talking, so I guess we're going to go ahead and leave it at that.
And that's where it ends.
I didn't want to interrupt her. She just was speaking so truth to power, like, the entire time. Like, just go off, Queen. Oh my goodness. Because, yeah, the whole time, he's been using the appeal from authority while also pussyfooting behind statements like, I'm not a military strategist, or I'm not informed. Which, okay, if you're not informed, just don't make statements about it. And if you truly feel inclined to make a statement about it, well, inquire further. Inquire further from multiple sources. Not just one source, not just from your friend who made a shitty song in Windows Movie Maker. Like, be curious about the world around you. And if you are gonna make a political statement, own it. Like, what you're making here is a political statement, even if you don't want to believe that it is. By your standard, freeing Jewish hostages is not political, but freeing Palestinian hostages is political. You have a double standard, as we previously established. Saying free Palestine is not anti-Semitic. It should never be seen as anti-Semitic. Are there pro-Palestinian activists and Palestinians themselves who are anti-Semitic? Of course, I'm not gonna deny that. Are there anti-Semites who oppose Zionism and the Israeli nation state? Of course, but I want to lead you on to a little secret. If the IDF was decimating Palestinian lives because the whole Palestinian population was anti-Semitic, then the IDF would have already bombed the United States, because the United States has a growing population of neo-Nazis, whom, by the way, I don't know if you remember, neo-Nazis are fucking anti-Semitic as shit. That's how the Holocaust happened. The Blood Tribe would have been fucking bombed by now, which exists in the United States. The Proud Boys would have been bombed by now, which exists in the United States. The traditionalist movements would have been bombed by now, which exists in the United States. All of these different sects of Christianity that are wildly anti-Semitic, especially Christian Zionism, which, by the way, in case you don't know, they support Israel because they want Jews to go back to Israel so that when the rapture happens, the Jews can burn in hell. That's their world belief. That's why they are the majority of supporters of Israel. Don't tell anybody I told you this. All those people would have been bombed by now, but no. The IDF are bombing Palestine because they want to expand themselves as a nation state, and they want to go after other countries other than just Palestine. They want to go after Libya. They want to go after Jordan. They definitely want to go after Iran. And to be clear, they wanted to go after Iran before Iran tried to drone strike them earlier this year. If you're going to try to use Judaism as an appeal from authority, you have to be able to understand that this isn't about Judaism. This is about nation states fighting each other. This has nothing to do with religion. He uses this and then also at the same time pivots to the argument that he's not a military strategist, which, yeah, that makes a lot more sense now because that's what this is about. Military strategy.
I'm not a military strategist.
And to be clear, you don't need to be a military strategist to have a firm stance against genocide. Yet you are commenting on this issue like you have some appeal from authority. Let me give you an example here. I play guitar, right? Now can you imagine if I was playing guitar and somebody who plays piano was trying to educate me on how to sweep pick a guitar? Yeah, that would sound really fucking stupid, and I would tell that pianist to stay in their lane because duh. Then say Herman Lee from Dragon Force came over and he was like,
so it would be one, that's a hammer. Slow. You know, you're definitely going to try to pick every single note, and you really have to concentrate on the right hand and play extremely, extremely slowly. I think your fingers should be in a shape that it actually can roll. Oh, it's lovely. Look, it rolls like a wheel. We really need to slow this.
I don't know how to sweep pick, for the record. I'm not that good. At least then Herman Lee would have the legitimacy to appeal from authority because he knows how to sweep pick. He's clearly like a musician with talent and he's accomplished with lots of experience. Or say a pianist who can probably play really well on piano and can probably play some really good music on piano as well, can't explain to me how to sweep pick on guitar unless they also have that skill somehow. They would have to explain and demonstrate that they have the legitimacy to be able to explain that. But here's the thing though, the song that he shared in his tweet, which is why people are questioning him, this in particular is paired with the verse that Palestinians are hateful souls, as black as night. And if it really was as simple as Hamas bad guy, Israel good guy, then yeah, okay, that would be the end of this discussion. But Israel is doing an ethnic cleansing campaign. This extends far beyond Hamas. The number of casualties, as we've gone over earlier in this video, exceed that tremendously, like a lot. And to Mike Pollock, I just want to say one last thing. If I can just get any message stuck in your head, is that I do care about you, like a lot. You significantly impacted my childhood for the better with your funny voice lines with Dr. Eggman. I think you're absolutely hilarious, and I think you fit the role so well, and I would hate to see you lose your job with Sega. And throughout our time together in this previous hour and half an hour if you're coming from the Sonic Show YouTube channel, the fans care about you. They love you. We all do. But at the same time, you gotta have a stance. You gotta really educate yourself on some of the things that you say before you say them. In fact, you're really privileged in the fact that people do care enough to try to spell it out for you most of the time. Your shortcomings, especially on this topic. I think perhaps you could benefit from going to a student protest, whom, by the way, are more courageous than you or I, for that matter. Please, I urge you to use the benefit of hindsight, to inquire further, to want to learn the history of how Israel was founded, the history of Palestine. For the benefit of perspective, I would strongly recommend you look into anti-Zionist Jewish activism. You could probably get a much more thorough response than anything I could have given you in this video. Because if you're going to be using your lineage as your default, then I think we really learned nothing from the past. And that's not going to really help us for the future. Thank you.